little protectionism, perhaps, in a very positive way, and we're going to discuss a lot of different things. We've had great meetings. We have a very, very good relationship, and we look forward to spending some very good time together.
As the two walked away from reporters, one asked if they would talk about election interference. President Trump can be heard saying, "Don't meddle in the elections." Night 2 of the Democratic debates illustrate the contrast between the candidates. In the middle of the stage in Miami, two older white men, former Vice President Joe Biden and Senator Bernie Sanders, flanking him, a young gay mayor, Pete Buttigieg.
I'm running because the decisions we make in the next 3 or 4 years are going to decide how the next 30 or 40 go.
A young Asian former tech executive, Andrew Yang.
And the right candidate to beat Donald Trump will be solving the problems that got Donald Trump elected, and will have a vision of a trickle-up economy that is already drawing thousands of disaffected Trump voters, conservatives, independents, and libertarians, as well as Democrats and progressives.
And several women, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand.
As president, I will take on the fights that no one else will.
Senator Kamala Harris.
I will be a president who leads with a sense of dignity, with honesty, speaking the truth, and giving the American family all that they need to get through the end of the month in a way that allows them to prosper.
And author Marianne Williamson, who accuses the president of harnessing fear.
I'm going to harness love for political purposes. I will meet you on that field, and sir, love will win.
This is Fox News.
The sky's the limit with Bank Pacific's secure MyCloud banking. You can access your account 24/7 with your smartphone, your computer, your iPad, or any other tablet. You can pay bills, set up alerts, check your balances, wire transfer money. It's never been easier. Enroll online or come on in and see one of our friendly staff. Digital Life, Digital Solutions. Bank Pacific.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender, FDIC. Viva Bank Pacific.
Hey, welcome to this Subway ad for the new club collection. How do you want it?
I'll take a book club.
Absolutely.
So, last week we sunk our teeth into Subway's meaty new release, the Steak Club.
I didn't finish it yet.
Oh, not again, Sandra. This week, it's the new Southwest Chicken Club, also by Subway. No spoilers, but there's a tasty twist.
Jalapeno cheddar bread and guacamole?
Sandra, get out. Subway, make it what you want.
Good ending.
Limited time only at participating restaurants.
The House passes a multi-billion-dollar measure that was backed by the Senate that will provide aid for families at the border.
The Democratic-controlled House has sent a $4.6 billion humanitarian relief bill to the president, agreeing to a Senate-approved plan and dropping restrictions on detention facilities used to house migrant children.
It will not be the end of this debate. It will be the battle cry. It will be the battle cry as how we go forward to protect children in a way that truly honors their dignity and worth.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi conceded votes from dozens of progressives in her caucus, relying instead on votes from Republicans and more moderate Democrats, passing the bipartisan compromise 305 to 102. The emergency funding won Senate approval 84-8.
Fox's Jared Halpern in Capitol Hill. Another state expands gender options on driver's licenses.
Hawaii residents will have a third option when it comes to selecting gender on licenses starting July of next year. Beyond male or female, there will also be X for those who prefer not to identify with either gender. Hawaii, the 9th state to offer up the option. The bill also allows applicants to choose or change gender without documentation. Governor David Ige saying his state has the highest percentage of transgender individuals in the U.S., and the bill demonstrates commitment to equal treatment for everyone. Lillian Wu, Fox News.
An alleged cop killer is caught in Wisconsin 10 days after the fatal shooting of police officer John Hetland. Racine police say they arrested a suspect. A masked robber killed the 24-year police force veteran and a father of two at a local tavern as he tried to stop a robbery. And Dow futures up 21 points at this hour. The Dow lost 10 points yesterday. The NASDAQ gained 57. Carmen Roberts, this is Fox News.
When it comes to power and performance, nothing compares to Dodge. And right now at Cars Plus in Mighty, you can save thousands on many Dodge vehicles in stock during our Dodge Performance Days. Like a new 2019 Grand Caravan SE, save $4,250, or save $6,150 on a new Durango SXT. Looking for more power? Take home a new Charger SXT Plus today for only $37,689, or save over $7,000 on a new Challenger GT. Get more power and performance at Cars Plus in Mighty during Dodge Performance Days. Cars Plus, driven by you.
Discover a new Galaxy. GTA introduces the new Samsung Galaxy S10 in 3 different sizes. The Galaxy S10 comes with cool new features like Power Share that allows you the ability to share your battery power with other devices. Or you can capture a wider world with its new camera featuring an ultra-wide lens for when you need to take pictures of the whole family. And with GTA handset payment option, you can take home a Galaxy S10 for $0 down. GTA, we start with you.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's how we start the program every day, dealing with the Second Amendment, the Bill of Rights, the United States Constitution, etc. And I have been trumpeting the beginning of Gun Pride Month on the 1st of July. We've devoted a couple of these little vignettes to Gun Pride Month. Put it this way, Gun Pride Month will be that month of the year where all of us pro-gunners come out and proud, open carrying in public, etc. And on the 4th of July, I'm hoping that we have a parade down Marine Corps Drive where those who have long guns carry them on their shoulders and those who have pistols carry them at parade rest as they march down Marine Corps Drive. Gun Pride Month. It's about time. As an added feature today, I have a limerick from the poet laureate of Tall Tales, Andrew. And here's what Andrew submits for today. 2 more days, then it's July. The flags will be waving on high. We know that for sure our rights are secure. We proudly proclaim Gun Pride Month. Yes. Real Joe Cruz, do you happen to have a limerick there in your quiver?
Nice. I do.
You do?
I do. I happen to have one.
Well, let's hear it.
Okay. Our Bob is not known to fumble over issues that cause most to stumble. His senses are keen, cutting through smokescreen. How does he remain so humble?
Great choice of words, Real Joe Cruz.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you
very
very
good.
much.
It's actually Andrew's, but I really appreciate the dramatic reading that you were able to submit Andrew's words to. I just have the feeling that you really believed in what you were saying.
I did, sir.
Very good. Thank you very much, Real Joe Cruz. So I've got a study here from Bearing Arms. Study finds causal link between media coverage and gun buying frenzies. Immediately after a mass shooting, it seems the gun stores become inundated with people looking to buy new guns. In particular, they often ask for something similar to what the killer used. This has been interpreted by some as evidence that gun owners are sick people. After all, they think those who want those guns only want them because they've been proven or something. They think we want them because the killer used them to slaughter the innocent. Nothing is further from the truth, though. I've long maintained that those buying frenzies are spurred by concerns over gun control coming in and making those guns unavailable. There's now a study that suggests there's a causal link between these gun buying surges and the media coverage of gun control. For the first time, researchers have shown a causal link between print news media coverage of U.S. gun control policy in the wake of mass shooting events and increases in firearms acquisition, particularly in states with the least restrictive gun laws. The results of the study, led by researchers at NYU Tandon School of Engineering in collaboration with the faculty at the UCLA Fielding School of Public Health and Northeastern University, are rooted in a data-driven approach that reveals causal relationships rather than mere correlations. It's the first study to quantify the influence of news media stories on firearms prevalence. Media coverage and firearms acquisition in the aftermath of mass shooting was published in Nature Human Behavior. Increases in firearms purchases following mass shootings are well-observed phenomena, likely driven by concerns that these events could lead to more restrictive gun controls. Lead author Maurizio Porfiri, New York University Tandon Professor of Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering, noted that this is the first study to empirically examine and confirm the link between news stories specifically about gun policy and increased acquisition of firearms. However, in one surprising finding, the analysis revealed no causal link between an actual mass shooting and gun purchases. Previous studies had noted a correlation between the two. Now, back to the column. However, that surprising finding isn't all that surprising. Gun buyers aren't spurred on by mass shooters, but by policy discussions that ensue after the shooting. If the media didn't push a gun control narrative after such horrific events, people wouldn't go out and buy guns they fear are about to be banned. See, while many would-be gun buyers don't buy into the media's crap most of the time, they tend to believe most other people do. They see media reports, the media pushing for gun control in their less than subtle way, and they freak. They figure a ban is coming, so they rush out to the gun store to pick up whatever. The study pretty much proves what we already know. That said, this isn't a pro-gun study. The researchers make it clear they're towing the anti-gun party line somewhere along the line. However, that doesn't invalidate their findings necessarily. After all, when they're confirming what we can see with our own eyes, there's probably some validity to the findings. Just don't think the researchers are going to be setting up a booth at the next gun show or something. So if you're in the gun business, if you're selling guns, then the best sales device you could have would be government officials saying, you know, we've got to ban these guns. We've got to have more gun control. As people rush out and buy those guns, hoping to beat the gun control. Interesting story. But 2 more days. What is today? Yeah, today's the 28th. So next, let's see, 29th. Monday will be the first day of Gun Pride Month. Yeah. Okay. So from there, from the 7th, as you were the Second Amendment, we go to Zemi Ikotny. Yeah, so Zemi Ikotny, you remember this is that part of the day where we have our own version of Meet the Press, where I take my blue pencil and go through the 2 editorials of the editorials of each of our daily newspapers with my blue pencil, searching for errors in grammar and usage, looking for logical fallacies, hunting down factual inaccuracies. seeing if there's something of some substance in an editorial, and if there is, to compare it with the other editorial, and upon completion of the analysis, awarding the coveted blue star to the more meritorious of the two. And most of the time, it's not much of a contest because the Daily News doesn't write editorials. They serve as a posting board for the stuff that they get from USA Today or Gannett or something like that. And it's always the same thing. It's always, how may we bash Donald Trump today in such a manner that we haven't done it before, or at least we haven't done it this week? And today's no exception. This comes from the USA Today editorial board. And it says, our view, it's getting worse. Trump's immigration policies are the picture of ineptitude. Yeah, so very topical, very timely, really addressing local issues that we're all invested in. I think we only had one local editorial this week from the Daily News. The rest of it was the anti-Trump stuff that they get from Washington, D.C. Okay, then we got the Post. And the Post says, our community no longer feels safe, and it worries many of us. Based on the second village meeting on public safety since the random attacks involving machete-wielding men in Manila weeks ago, which our governor said was blown out of proportion, by the way, just so we don't forget, in which the mayor of Dedido, Melissa, what's her last name?
Savares?
Yeah, Melissa Savares said was exaggerated, yeah. The recurring acts of violence that victimize Guam residents in their homes and on the roads are at the top of the mind for a lot of our fellow islanders. The most recent town hall meeting held in Tamuning heard the voice of a resident in the village, Javier Atalig. That's the way most people would pronounce it, but Javier himself pronounces it Javier, Javier. Javier said, I don't mean to come up here and point the fingers, but you got to see what I got to deal with every day. I've been robbed already 3 times. Who's doing anything about it? Let's wake up, people. This is a very important matter. Another Tamuning resident, Gregorio Calvu, expressed an observation that captured how things have changed on the island. Many of us are in fear of being the next victim. But he isn't one to easily cast blame on a particular group of migrants. We're living in restless times, Calvo said. Our island, we're going through things. We are Micronesian too. We need to come together and reason together. We are not perfect. Oh, that's a great argument. Yeah, that's really a way to move a crowd and get things done. We are not perfect. Many of us no longer feel safe in our homes as we go out in the streets, the editorial said. There have been suggestions that our faith-based organizations can do something more to encourage the youth, especially, to be good citizens, and that our neighborhood watch groups can do better to be more vigilant. These steps can help. Ultimately, though, the responsibility of addressing these problems rests on lawmakers, the governor and her administration, and our judges. Enforcement of existing laws must improve, and this requires more people and smarter utilization and deployment of police officers, plus better use of technology. Surveillance cameras in public places, though not popular to some, must be installed if these are what make a difference to deter crime and catch criminals. There's got to be a review by lawmakers in consultation with the judges and administration on the justice system and why repeat criminals keep getting released from prison and victimizing more people. I got to stop here. You know, governor and legislature should get together on this. They shouldn't do it behind closed doors, however. Yeah. separation of powers, two independent branches. I don't think that judges should be sitting down with senators and governors talking about the crime problem. We're supposed to have an independent judiciary, and judges are supposed to only judge the cases that come before them. And they're supposed to do it in an impartial manner in accordance with the law. I've climbed this soapbox many times before. The members of the legislature need to look at Chapter 40 of 8 GCA. To his credit, Jim Moylan has. That's the section of law that deals with pretrial release. It perhaps needs to be tightened up. Senators need to look at the criminal code and tighten up on some of the sentences for various crimes. Sit around and complain and cry and kvetch and wring our hands isn't going to do it. Blaming the judges won't help. The judges are going to act like judges, I hope, and not be swayed by the popular sentiment of what's going on in the community. They're supposed to be rendering justice on the individual case, not sign up for what amounts to a lynch mob in black robes. So senators and governors, your job to sit down and take a long, hard look at our entire criminal justice system and make the necessary changes. So the editorial says there's got to be a review by lawmakers in consultation with the judges and the administration on the justice system and why repeat criminals keep getting released from prison and victimizing more people. I just spoke about why judges should not be included in that mix. Drug addiction and poverty are also part of the root causes. But at bare minimum, repeat criminals and one-time violent criminals must be remained locked up for the full length of their sentences. In Wednesday's village meeting, retired airport police chief Robert Camacho recommended a need to address the weaknesses in Guam's law enforcement community and those who continue to break the law. And he's right. We're tired of repeat offenders roaming our streets and neighborhoods looking for their next victims. While the meeting was unfolding Wednesday night, our newsroom was placing a story that had a ring of familiarity to it. A homeowner who resides in Tamuning saw a man in his mid-20s peering through his kitchen window. The trespasser, when asked what he was doing on someone else's property, responded that he was just looking. Perhaps casing the joint for a burglary. When police were called, this suspect was found in possession of methamphetamine, according to a court documents filed by a prosecutor. We ran the suspect's name through our files and found that he's been named in at least 3 cases involving acts of violence since he was 18. He pleaded guilty to aggravated assault for beating that left the victim unconscious in 2015, barely 4 years ago. It's tough to understand from a layman's view why he's still roaming free in our community, literally peeking through someone's kitchen window. In this particular incident, we're thankful the homeowner's safe. The outcome could have been tragic. Senators, governor, judges, our community no longer feels safe, and it worries many of us. Don't get distracted with issues that are less important. Drinking straws, balloons, the Cannabis Industry Act, gambling at the carnival. Yeah. Let's pay a little bit more attention to business. So it's not the best editorial that I've seen. It's certainly better than the Daily News, and it meets minimal standards. So today, the coveted Blue Star goes to the Guam Post. Yeah, and they got a standing ovation for that one, didn't they? Okay, now it's time to jump into the card for today. first item on the card, as you were, let me go through the card here. Yesterday I covered why the Magua village remains should be the eighth wonder of the world, and how the governor was treed, the tree of knowledge. Okay, and here's what I got on the calendar today. The hitman Hunter versus the anti-aborts. Maria Mesa versus Rory, also known as Rory versus KUAM. The Chamber of Commerce versus Joe San Augustine. Bavacqua versus the United States. And Independence Lou versus the United States of America. So on Hitman Hunter versus anti-aborts, this is a story from the Daily News. Director of Bureau of Women's Affairs Jane Flores researching abortion provider. And you'll recall a few days ago I read a little note from the Pope. And the Pope said you don't even need to look at religion to know that an abortionist, someone who performs an abortionist, is no different from a hitman. You know, murder for hire. That's what he said, without even getting into Catholicism at all. Pretty hard to get around that. And I sometimes pose the question, when is it okay to take an innocent life? And I almost always come up with the same answer. Never. It's never okay to take an innocent life. So here's what the story said. Residents, as you were, after the administration announced they'd be looking into recruiting an abortion provider for Guam, Director of Bureau of Women's Affairs Jane Flores this week said she's still researching the issue. Flores said in an email that the administration's efforts to recruit a doctor or clinic to provide abortions here is part of a larger plan to increase access to birth control, etc. I'm still gathering information on all of the above, Flores said. About 2 weeks ago, Governor Lulian Guerrero told the Associated Press that officials on Guam are trying to recruit doctors to come to the island to establish clinics. The news prompted the Catholic Pro-Life Committee to protest against the administration's efforts. Although abortion is legal in Guam up to 13 weeks, there hasn't been a provider since Dr. Freeman retired a year ago. No abortions have been reported to the government since May of 2018, according to the Office of Vital Statistics. So my comment here is, I guess when the governor found out that there haven't been any abortions for over a year, they saw this as an emergency. We've got to get our numbers up. We've got to be competitive with other jurisdictions. How can we go along and not have any abortions at all? It's embarrassing. So we need an abortionist. Now, no abortionist wants to come here, so we've got to go out and find one and recruit him or entice him to come over here so that we can get our numbers up. I guess not stopping to consider that a large number of people in this community would think no abortions for over a year is really good news. It's a classic case. It's not a class of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's a classic case of, you can't break it. So don't worry about fixing it. So much for the hitman versus pro-aborts. Next, we've got Maria Mesa versus Rory. Also, Rory versus KUAM. So there's a story in, I guess it's the Post. There's a dialogue between Maria Taitano. You'll recall that Maria Taitano is a board member who's been on the board for a few years. And when the new administration came in, the governor said, well, Maria, I'm going to appoint somebody to take your place now. Thank you for your service. Maria said, I ain't going anywhere. I'm going to serve to the end of my term, which I think is maybe the end of this month or maybe the end of Gun Pride Month, somewhere along there. And so this is what the story says. No legal counsel, staff attorney, or lawyer of any kind present at the Port's board meeting yesterday, and that had one board member feeling nervous. Former board legal counsel Phillips and Berdalio's contract expired on June 17, and it could be months before the Port hires another firm to represent it. The agency is close to hiring a staff attorney, which Port GM Rory Respicio said would handle the Port's Civil Service Commission cases, including the controversial appeals of the so-called Port 7. Respicio and Deputy GM Connie Shinohara telling the board 3 lawyers applied for the staff attorney position and interviews are set to begin. While the board was told that AG's office has agreed to handle legal representation, there was no attorney present at the meeting. Board member Maria Taitano said, "I'm just nervous because as a board member, we don't have board counsel to protect us." Respicio added, to address the concern, there's no requirement of a lawyer to be at the board meeting. So Rory put on his lawyer's hat to give Maria some comfort. The Port will ask for continuances for its current ongoing cases until a staff attorney is brought in. The AG's office is currently vetting the agency's RFP for specialized legal services. While Respicio told the board the AG's office would be available for any procedural questions, Taitano wasn't satisfied. Okay, that's part of the story. This is a KUAM story. I'm going to come back to this right after this short break.
Here at APL, our core values give the company its heart and soul. Whether it's connecting your business with our global network through our newly enhanced service or investing our efforts into giving back to the community, APL is committed to serving you. We humbly honor the opportunity to find innovative solutions for you and your business. To learn more about our enhanced service, call 588-4651 or visit www.apl.com/Guam for more details.
We know too well the inconvenience of not having power after a storm. You worry about the food in the freezer going bad. Nights get hot. It's hard finding comfort when going to sleep. These are realities. But with solar and battery storage from Micronesia Renewable Energy, these realities can be a thing of the past. The solar works during the day and the batteries power your home at night. Call 632-2613 to see how solar plus battery storage can make life a little more convenient. MRE, the smarter choice. And now, back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
You'll recall that Rory, immediately upon being appointed the general manager of the Port, at the very first board meeting, told the board he wanted to get rid of Mike Phillips. And he also, at that meeting, I think, said he was appointing Connie Shinohara as deputy director to start a task force to investigate the termination of the Port 7. And at one Civil Service Commission hearing, Kurt Vandeveld, who represents Bernadette Stern, the key figure in the Port 7, told the commission that they'd had some talks about settlement, which Rory said, no, we haven't had any talks about settlement. Then at the last meeting, when Bernadette Stern-Mano was supposed to appear, Darlene Hinton from Phillips's office showed up, and Connie Shinohara was there and said, you don't represent the Port. You are not the Port's attorney anymore. So the Port didn't have an attorney there. Weinberg was there to ask for a 30-day continuance, and that was about it. But apparently Rory and Connie Shinohara can handle these things themselves. In the story in the Post, this sentence appears. There are a couple more Port 7 cases scheduled for next week. Shinohara said, and the same thing will happen. We're going to request a 30-day continuance. So I guess with Shinohara and Rory, whether they have a lawyer or not is all that important. With respect to Hidden, I kind of feel sorry for her because once a lawyer appears in a case before a tribunal or a court or something like that, the lawyer can't just not show up. The lawyer can't leave his client in a lurch, and he has to usually substitute in another lawyer to take his place. So it was very untoward for Connie Shinohara to show up at the Civil Service Commission meeting and say, oh, you don't represent the Civil Service Commission. So that's part of it. And then as far as, that's Rory versus Maria Mesa, who says she doesn't like the idea of having a meeting without counsel because they've always had counsel before. Rory assures her, you really don't need counsel, it's okay. And then this dialogue occurred. This is the second part of this part of the card. Taitano says, I don't want to get this with anything not having a legal counsel. I just need to put that on the record. Just the mere fact, I think this is the first time the board has not had legal counsel. And I just need, Respicio says, Rory says, the media will spin it to be interpreted, we're meeting illegally. So that's Rory's first ruling, you know. The media will spin it that we're meeting illegally. When questions are raised as to whether or not this meeting should have happened with or without counsel, it's spun out there by the media. Taitano says, but that's not my point. Respicio, my point is the points being made, it creates a problem for us. In other words, what Taitano is saying creates a problem for Rory and the board because the media is going to spin it. And then Respicio says, my point is the points being made, it creates a problem for us. Taitano says, well, hopefully KOAM does not spin it. Rory says, they will. So I have a little free advice for Rory when it comes to dealing with the media. This is old-time, old-fashioned advice, so you have to kind of modernize it to make it fit today's technology. But the advice goes like this, Real Joe Cruz. Never pick a fight with someone who buys his newsprint by the carload and his ink by the barrel. When you fight with the media, it's like wrestling with a pig. You get all muddy, and the pig loves it. So, Rory, there isn't much percentage here in telling your board members that they shouldn't speak out because the media is just going to spin it. And when KOAM comes up saying, oh yeah, KOAM will spin it, that's for sure. Okay, that's the item on the card called Maria Mesa versus Rory and Rory versus KUAM. Next item on the card is the Chamber versus Joe San Augustine. And I believe as we speak, the legislature is entertaining Joe San Augustine's bill to raise the minimum wage, notwithstanding the fact that every time the subject of minimum wage comes up, I set everybody straight by telling them that I don't like to see the government control the price of anything, certainly not the price of labor. And I asked this provocative question, if the minimum wage really works, and I don't think it does, then why horse around with $9.25 an hour? Why not make the minimum wage $50 an hour? Then everybody will have enough money to buy a nice car, a nice house, to take a vacation to Vallejo or wherever they want to go on vacation and live happily ever after. If the minimum wage really works, if an act of the legislature can really raise real wages, and I submit that it can't. And I also ask this question. If you're setting the minimum wage at $9.25 an hour, what you're doing is you are illegalizing, you're outlawing any contract to work for less. You're saying it's against the law to work for less than $9.25 an hour. So what happens to the guy whose labor, whose efforts are only worth $9 an hour, not worth $9.25 an hour, especially in a time like this? What does he do? He can't approach somebody and say, you know, I'm not really very good at what I do, but I'll try hard. If you just pay me $9 an hour, I'll give you my best shot. You can't do that. So what it means is the only real minimum wage is zero, because anyone whose time is not worth the arbitrarily set minimum wage is not going to be hired. Employers hire people to work for them because they see that their profits will increase incrementally by the wages of the person that they hire. So if I'm in business and if I devote my own time to something, I could make $20 an hour. And if I could hire somebody for $10 an hour who would take some of the easier stuff off my back, allowing me to concentrate on stuff that I can do, then I could perhaps increase my wage to $30 an hour and pay him $10 and make more money. But if I can make $20 an hour by myself and I hire somebody for $8.25 an hour, whose time is only worth $6 an hour, I haven't come out ahead. I haven't gained anything. So minimum wage is one of those things that FDR stuck us with during the so-called Great Depression that popular mythology thinks is a real way to help poor people. And it's not. Minimum wage is supposed to be an entry-level wage based on the premise that when people first start working, they probably aren't worth as much as they will be after they've worked for a while and gained some experience. The Chamber has submitted a statement on Joe's bill, and they aren't saying no. They're not saying hell no or even no. They're saying if you're going to do it in incrementally. First tier, raise it by 50 cents an hour by April 1 of 2020, and the second tier, another 50 cents an hour by April 1 of 2021. So I guess if you got to do it, it makes sense to phase it in so that it's not all that disruptive to the people that actually pay the minimum wage, which is businesses. I don't think there is a job title in the government of Guam where the salary is as low as the minimum wage. So this is something where senators are figuring out what's good for everybody else and something they won't be subject to themselves. They'd like to see a youth or juvenile wage. They'd like to see a tip credit program. Now, we had a tip credit program at one time, and we did away with it. The way a tip credit program works is this. A restaurant owner, a bar owner, a business where tips from patrons are frequent doesn't have to pay the full minimum wage. The rule is that the combination of the wage and the tips must equal the minimum wage. And just about every jurisdiction has that tip credit program. We don't have it anymore. So now waiters, waitresses, I was going to say bus boys, but I'm going to catch myself, bus people.
You could say waitress days.
Yeah, well, them anyhow, yeah. Now have to be paid the full minimum wage. There's no more tip credit. There is a lot to be said about whether the institution of tipping is a good idea or a bad idea. I think it's a good idea. I would like to have the ability to pay someone based on my perception of how much his services are worth. So if somebody is a really good waiter or waitress, then I would like to give that person a tip and pay him a little bit more than minimum wage. The Chamber also suggests repealing Public Law 135, which increased property taxes on property worth $1 million or more. They want to see a specific control on government spending, and they want to invest in upscaling the local workforce so island residents command higher wages. Well, this is one of those kinds of things that it will pass, no question, and it will provide a golden opportunity for virtue signaling for senators talking about, our people, and so many of our people are struggling just to make ends meet, and they're down at the poverty level, and I'm going to do something to help them.
Families.
They have family, yes. You should use the word, a senator should use the word family at least once in every sentence in order to do it properly. Yeah. So even if I were able to convince them that the minimum wage is a useless gesture, that wouldn't stop our senators from passing it because it's such a great opportunity for virtue signaling. And for the Democrats, it fits right into the Democrat way of doing things. It doesn't have to work in order to be acceptable to a Democrat. Whether it's successful, whether it works, not important. The important thing is to be able to say, well, we saw a problem and we tried. We were very sincere and we tried. So you can bet that at the public hearing, there will be a lot of the members who, instead of listening to the witnesses, will take the opportunity to launch into long soliloquies explaining why they're for the minimum wage and how much they identify with these poor folks that are out there working for $8.25 an hour instead of $55,311 like they are. Okay, so much for that one. That's now we've got Bavacqua versus the United States. This is Bavacqua's latest hit piece in the Daily News. And I think I've explained this before, that the cultural Marxist approach to politics is that an operative must do everything that he can to destroy faith in the status quo. Yesterday, I explained the phrase that Vladimir Ilyich Lenin coined: the worse it is, the better. In other words, the worse conditions are, the more likely it is that people will want to try a different form of government. And what I foresee, if Bavacqua were to take this all the way across the finish line, would be the Chamorro People's Socialist Republic of Guam. And maybe he could be the commissar, maybe not, I don't know. But the idea is to find as much fault as you can with the United States, using the words, the big three C words: colonialism, culture, and Chamorro, as often as you can, and try to make paint the United States in as unflattering a shade as you possibly can, to get people to say, yeah, darn the United States, we got to have control of our own island. We should be independent. And that's where I didn't get a chance to really explain it the other day. I think I have it here. Another phrase that comes up a lot is, useful idiot. Now, it's not nice to run around and call people idiots, especially talk show hosts. So the word useful idiot, the phrase useful idiot, is one of those where you know the meaning of each of the words, but when you put them together, they have a different meaning than they did as individual words. So I'm going to read this definition. In political jargon, a useful idiot is a derogatory term for a person perceived as a propagandist for a cause, the goals of which he or she does not fully comprehend. As an example, well, yeah, Michael Bavacqua is for Chamorros, and he talks about Chamorro rights. I like that, so, I'm going to pick that up and make it my own. I'll come back to useful idiots right after we take this short break here.
Hey, it's Mom. Somebody forgot to thaw the chicken, so meet us at Chili's for 2 for $25. Oh, and congratulate your sister for making the basketball team. She's thrilled. Love you. See you at Chili's.
Enjoy 2 full meal combos for $25. An appetizer, 2 mouth-watering entrees like our crispy chicken breast, smoked barbecue quarter leg, or smoked jalapeno cheddar sausage. Served with corn on the cob and french fries. 2 bold combos for $25. A full-on meal deal available nightly for a limited time. Together, we Chili's.
Let's go for a drive.
Let's take a stroll. Let's gallivant.
Let's go cruising.
We all have different ways to describe how we get up and go in our cars. But whatever you may call it, you can do more of it when you save 6% off your fuel purchases at any Shell station when you use your eligible Bank of Guam Visa and MasterCard credit cards. So stop by any Guam or CNMI Shell station and start saving today. Visit bankofguam.com for more information. Terms and conditions apply. Bank of Guam, the People's Bank. Member FDIC.
Yeah, so I'm going on with the definition of useful idiot. A derogatory term for a person perceived as a propagandist for a cause, the goals of which he or she does not fully comprehend, and who is used cynically by the leaders of the cause. The term was originally used during the Cold War to describe non-communists regarded as susceptible to communist propaganda and manipulation. The term has often been attributed to Vladimir Lenin, but this attribution is unsubstantiated. So it's kind of an inflammatory term, and I don't mean it in the literal sense that people that mouth that propaganda are intellectually challenged. I'm just using it in the same sense as it was used during the Cold War, which is, believe it or not, where I first heard it and made it part of my own thought process. So Bavacqua's column today, look beyond patriotism when remembering December 8 attack. And of course, the look beyond patriot, now he didn't write the editorial. I mean, he didn't write the headline, but of course, that's what he would always have you do, is look beyond patriotism. Beat the drum about the colonist, the colonial master, what a horrible country the United States is, that Guam has to become independent. Otherwise, it's, it's a matter of the oppressor and the oppressed. And the oppressor is, as so often mentioned, it's the federal government. And the oppressed are Chamorros. So he says, I wrote in my column last week how the meaning of historical commemoration depends largely on where we begin and end the story. History is filled with lessons, but how we bring its elements into the present can help us or hurt us in terms of what we learn or don't learn. Our retelling of Guam history during World War II usually begins with bombs falling on December 8. The initial attacks by the Japanese, just a few hours after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, are described in the words of the survivors as a jarring, terrible surprise. Bavacqua knows better. The shock of the assault is played up in order to heighten the drama of the retelling. It's used to lay the narrative groundwork for the stories of oppression and violence by the Japanese. It also helps us understand the Chamorro patriotism that became widespread by July 1944. But one thing few people ask today is why the attack of 1941 was so shocking. I think I could tell you that, Michael Bavacqua. I was alive in 1941, long before you were. But if you're sitting in church and bombs start to fall, that's going to be pretty shocking, regardless of what your political orientation is. Many assume it was because Guam was so isolated and the news just didn't reach Guam, but that isn't true. The surprise is a key element in understanding the place of Chamorros during that era, and one important lesson we should glean from that tragedy. By 1941, war was raging elsewhere in the world. The Japanese were already fighting on the Asian continent. Well, the Japanese had started their war against China in 1932. It wasn't breaking news. Hitler was rampaging around Europe in 1940 and 1941. As I recall, December 1941, we were still dealing with the Sitzkrieg. Hitler had invaded Poland. France had invaded Germany, turned around and backed out. But maybe my memory's a little off, but I don't think Hitler had invaded France by that time. Anyhow, Hitler was rampaging around Europe. Chamorros were aware of the war. It was on the radio, in newspapers. Hundreds of Chamorros were already serving in the Navy at the time, and families were worried about their sons, cousins, or husbands. The U.S. knew that war was on the horizon and had anticipated this since the 1920s. In the 1920s, people didn't anticipate that bombs would be falling on the church on a Sunday morning. Again, you'll recall that in the 1920s, I think it was 1921, the United States, Japan, Britain, and a couple of other countries entered into a naval armaments conference where everybody limited the number of ships they could have in the Pacific. And the United States agreed not to fortify Guam. A little exaggeration there, Michael. But the U.S. government was torn over whether it was worth it to build up Guam, to try to defend it or not. Guam was largely considered to be indefensible. Not so. Because of that treaty, the United States had agreed not to fortify Guam. The United States was in an extreme isolationist mood during that period of time, regardless of world events. And it wasn't until, I believe, 1938, or maybe even later, that Congress appropriated money to fortify Guam and Wake Island. That's why there were people from Guam on Wake Island at the time the Japanese attacked. But it was way too little and way too late. It was a matter of domestic politics, not an execution of a foreign policy. And of course, islands are, unless you happen to be talking about the island of Malta, islands are pretty much indefensible. The Japanese had been, we got a big break coming up. I'm going to come back to this, and then after this, after I finish up with this, then I go to Independence Lou versus the USA.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
President Trump prepares for talks with China. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News.
At a minimum, it will be productive. We'll see what happens and what comes out of it.
President Trump moments ago talking to reporters about his meeting planned for tomorrow with China's President Xi. The president's in Japan for the G20 summit, but is meeting with other world leaders on the sidelines. And now there's a disconnect between the U.S. and China over what has been agreed to ahead of the meeting.
Chinese sources telling Fox News that the President Trump, has promised not to impose any new tariffs against China for 6 months as a goodwill gesture to put the trade talks back on track. But a senior administration official telling Fox News there has been no formal agreement to do that, but acknowledging it is possible an agreement to do that could arise out of the talks.
Fox's John Roberts in Osaka, Japan. Investors in the U.S. watching the talks between President Trump and Chinese President Xi closely, hoping that the two will reach a deal to avoid additional U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods. Stocks ended mixed yesterday ahead of that meeting. The Dow lost 10 points. The Nasdaq gained 57. Night 2 of the Democratic debates, and everything kind of seems to lean to the left. Fox's Ed Henry reports from Miami, where NBC hosted the debates.
Both Kamala Harris and Bernie Sanders raised their hands and said they want to end private health insurance, just as you heard Bill de Blasio as well as Elizabeth Warren say. Take a listen to what Joe Biden and others were saying about taxes and other big issues.
I would be going about eliminating Donald Trump's tax cuts for the wealthy.
Yes, they will pay more in taxes, but less in health care for what they get.
And frankly, this economy is not working for working people.
Those last comments from Senators Bernie Sanders and Kamala Harris in last night's debates, fiery compared to the first night. This is Fox News.
Hey, welcome to this Subway ad for the new club collection. How do you want it?
I'll take a book club.
Absolutely.
So, last week we sunk our teeth into Subway's meaty new release, the Steak Club.
I didn't finish it yet.
Oh, not again, Sandra. This week, it's the new Southwest Chicken Club, also by Subway. No spoilers, but there's a tasty twist.
Jalapeno cheddar bread and guacamole?
Sandra, get out. Subway, make it what you want.
Good ending.
Limited time only at participating restaurants.
Attention homeowners, if you don't have a solar energy system on your roof from Micronesia Renewable Energy, now is the time to get one. MRE solar energy systems now come with battery storage for zero money down. This means that your home will have power even when the island power isn't available, like during power outages or during and after storms. The inconvenience of not having power for your home is a thing of the past. Don't be left in the dark. Call 632-2613 for a free consultation. MRE, the smarter choice.
New clues in the case of missing Utah student Mackenzie Lewick. Police say that they have found a person of interest.
Police have not identified this person of interest and say they will only release a name when and if they make an arrest. But we have just learned a brand new adjustable massage bed was delivered to that home, and this coming just days after the owner gave away a mattress, selling it online, essentially giving it away. And now they want to get a hold of this mattress, get it to a crime lab, and run it through forensic tests. What remains unclear is whether the homeowner is the same person Mackenzie texted when she arrived at the Salt Lake City airport early on the morning of June 17th, or if it's the same person she met with a short time later after taking that ride share to a suburban park.
Fox's Claudia Cowan. The person of interest is identified as being a 31-year-old divorced man. Former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort's in New York to enter a plea.
Manafort pleaded not guilty to mortgage fraud and other charges. He's already serving more than 7 years on federal charges related to the special counsel's Russia investigation. Manafort's lawyer, Todd Blanche, says the federal conviction covers crimes New York is trying to prosecute.
We intend to move to dismiss the indictment based upon New York double jeopardy.
State lawyers say their case is entirely separate. While Manafort could still be pardoned by the president on his federal conviction, it would have no effect on any state conviction. Manafort faces 16 New York felony charges. In New York, Gernal Scott, Fox News.
And Facebook updating its guidelines for terms and services to clarify how it makes money from the personal information from users. Changes reflect ongoing attempts to satisfy regulators in the U.S. and Europe who have urged the company to make sure that users know what they're signing up for. I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
Ready to buy real estate on Guam? Congratulations! But what now? There are so many questions, so many things to do. Where do you start? The best place to start is to call Century 21 Commonwealth Realty, Guam's biggest name in real estate. They aren't the best because they're the biggest. They're the biggest because they're the best. Trust the name. Find out why. Call Century 21 Commonwealth Realty today. 888-2121. Trust the best.
GPSI Guam is a professional services company that is a registered contractor for the federal government. They're an SBA, 8A, and Hub Zone certified SDVOSB, providing program/project management, administration, technical support, logistics, and commodities. Find out more about GPSI and how they can help you today. For large prime companies, contact GPSI if you need assistance in meeting your small business subcontracting goals at 477-3058. They'll be happy to assist.
So another great show. I know the real Joe Cruz really enjoyed it. He always does. So last item on the card for today, I think, is Independence Lou versus the United States. And I'm going to start out here by reading excerpts from a couple of papers that were presented to the United Nations C-24 regular session, one by Melvin Borja and one by Joshua Tenorio. Now, you recall that Melvin Borja is the chairman, or excuse me, the executive director of the Commission for Chamorro Independence. It's called the Commission for Decolonization, but that isn't it. And that's not what it's intended to be. Let's talk about colonization and decolonization a little bit. Guam is a colony of the United States. It has been since 1950. It wasn't before that, but it has been since 1950. And there is a move that Guam should become decolonized. In other words, that Guam should stop being a colony. Well, how would that happen? Well, there are several different ways that it could happen, but it would have to happen to Guam, the island of Guam. The government of the island of Guam right now is the territorial government. It is a function of the United States. It is a colonial government, no question about it. And those who work for the government of Guam are working for the colonizers' government. But it doesn't seem to be much of a trouble. Doesn't seem to trouble many of the independentist folks too much. So if Guam were to be decolonized, that would mean that the territorial government would go out of existence and an independent government, an independent Guam would evolve from there. That isn't what the Commission on Decolonization is talking about. The only thing that they're talking about at that commission is self-determination for the Chamorro people. So arguably, there could be self-determination for the Chamorro people while Guam remains a colony. And arguably, Guam could be decolonized and no self-determination for the Chamorro people. In other words, they're not the same thing. So as this commission keeps complaining about no decolonization, et cetera, that's because that's not what they're trying to do. And I think that becomes clearer when you read some of the statements that, a couple parts of the statement that I'm going to point out here to you right now. I'm going to start out with the executive director, Melvin Wanpat Borja. And he says, it is, among other things, unfortunate that our administrating power has not lived up to their end in the supporting our desires for decolonization, but regardless of the circumstances, Guam remains steadfast. Guam remains steadfast in our pursuit of political sovereignty over our island. Political sovereignty. What does that mean? You know what that means, real Joe Cruz?
The ability to do whatever you please.
It means independence.
Yeah.
It means independence. Yeah. But regardless of the circumstances, Guam remains steadfast. Guam remains steadfast in our pursuit of political sovereignty over our island and our people and our right to determine our destiny. Now remember, this is Chamorro self-determination. This is not decolonization. And then he says, we applaud the United Nations commitment to transparency and their determination to send a visiting mission to Guam. We welcome this opportunity and hope that our administrating power will cooperate to the fullest. And then he says, decolonization education remains a priority for the government of Guam. Did you know that, real Joe Cruz?
I do.
That decolonization education is a priority for the government of Guam?
I know it now.
Yeah.
You just said it.
Yeah. I didn't know that.
Wow.
But of course, it's hard to find anything that a government does that you can't find some politician to say, well, yeah, that's a priority. My priorities are education, public safety, and public health. Decolonization education remains a priority for the government of Guam, and we have set in motion a strategic education plan that will make the most of limited resources we have at our disposal. Though we were awarded a small grant from the Department of Interior, the money will expire in September 30. You know, it's such a priority that the Chamorro Self-Determination Gang, Melvin included, have to ask the Department of Education for money to conduct the education campaign. And I remember American history, you know, back around the time of the Boston Tea Party, that I think it was the Continental Congress petitioned the British Parliament for a grant of some money for some education about American independence. Isn't that how it goes? Now we got Francis a little late. Francis, you're a little late today, but I'm glad you called.
Oh, thank you. We had some business to take care of this morning and this afternoon, so we just got home. I'm just catching some of your issues on decolonization. But when they say, when the independence group or Babakwa says that the Chamorro people, I didn't sign any declaration or anything that says I'm with the independence group, so he's like representing everybody. I'm feeling like he's trying to represent the whole Chamorro people here, but that's not right. So if they're trying to, I don't know, I wonder if they need to go through the process of maybe Department of Interior, or if they go to the United Nations and they get a blessing. But then again, I told them, I says, you know what, the U.S. pays just about all of their salaries over there, the contributions, you know. So if the U.S. says no, they're going to have to comply. But the point here I'm trying to clear is that they're saying that that's a moral people's will. And I feel like I'm already involved in this, and then I need to be educated, you know?
Yeah.
So it's starting to really bother me, you know. So I just wanted to air that out and find out where they're going, because I hear them talk about the war and the atrocities and that the occupation and the bombardment and all that, and I said, listen, man, like, you know, you're not going to get any of my sympathy, and this is the reality here. You're not the only ones that lost family or were crucified, you know, and all that, all part of the atrocities of war, you know. And I said, listen, man, I think you better stop talking about it, because I've been hearing about this ever since I was a young boy at 7 years old. After we've done work at the ranch, this is the stories I hear. So to hear it from somebody, and they're all gone now, my grandfather, World War I, World War II, my dad, everybody's been through hell, but it never stopped us, you know, from going on. And my grandfather, you know, retired Navy, retired Civil Service, and he wasn't much of trying to fight back or get back the land at NES, but he was always telling us about the national defense thing, you know. And he was a retired Navy. So he didn't push it or protest or made any claims, you know, against the Navy or the administering power at that time, because he was just hoping that maybe one day they'll give him some concern. But you know, but it really never bothered him. We were always working, even when he retired, Navy, Civil Service. We were always doing the farms, you know, corn, yams, you name it.
Yeah.
Right, anything you want, we had at the ranch. We had about 300 pigs, 1,000 ducks. That kept us busy. We never had time to, you know, even think about things like this. I'm just wondering, you know, that if they say that the will of the people of Guam, you know, I mean, I feel like I'm already being dragged into this. So I want to hear more from Babakwe, and I want him to clarify, because I want to ask him, are you including me in this? Because I didn't sign anything, or, you know, it's starting to really get on me. But, and they keep coming up with all kinds of excuses. So I'm not the only one. I'm not alone. The ones that are with me are very quiet. They're just listening, but they refuse to entertain. I'm probably the only one in the group that entertains this. So anyway, thank you for letting me vent a little bit.
It's always good to hear you, Francis.
I hope Babaka comes in, or any of the independence group, you know, and try to ease my mind here, because I feel like I'm being dragged into something that I'm not part of.
I understand, Francis.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
You have a wonderful weekend.
You too, Francis. Yeah. Okay, well, a few words of wisdom from Francis. So going on here with Melvin's rant, so to speak, he says, as you know, the federal justice system is currently being used to slow and impede our movement forward, and litigation has brought almost all activity to a screeching halt. The justice system has been used to impede. Yeah. Yeah, it's a terrible thing, you know, when you have a justice system that takes into consideration things like equal protection of the laws. And that, of course, is not at all what the independent Guam movement wants. I've coined the word democracy. Democracy means demo, people, cracy, government. Democracy, government by Chamorros. And I suspect that if you scrape if you could get them to be frank, that's what the nationalists want, is a democracy. So those who are not Chamorro might at best be tolerated, but that probably would be about the limit of it. But it's at this stage of the game, it's more important to do the identity politics, cultural Marxist stuff, and attack the United States government in any way that you can. As an example, on the next page here, it's no secret that the militarization of Guam plays a huge role in maintaining a colonial stranglehold on our island. And a little later on, we have recently witnessed blatant disregard for historical sites, artifacts, and ancestral remains, and the Tree of Knowledge. I don't think the whole Tree of Knowledge story had been unfolded at the time this was written, but it would have made a nice addition. He winds up by saying, our local government has cooperated and communicated consistently with our administrative power. Not so. There has never been, since we tried Commonwealth back in the 80s, there has never been an attempt by our local government to do anything along the lines of decolonization. Never once. And my own solution is that what we ought to have is a plebiscite. There ought to be one question on the plebiscite. Should the island of Guam become an independent sovereign nation apart from the United States? Yes or no? I wouldn't even care who voted. But until we answer that question, we're just kind of spinning our wheels here. Hi, Jesse.
Hey, hi. Hey, good afternoon today.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say, if there's people interested in the independence talk and all that, I know they have meetings at the Chamorro Village. I don't know, they usually post it on Facebook, but I'm not sure how many people actually use the Facebook, or especially the people in their 70s or 60s, or But and there's also something coming up on July 4th next week. So I think if people are interested in seeing what Bavacqua or whatever the groups are that advocate for independence, that'd be a good time to go down there and talk to people, and maybe learn a little bit on the issue. Last year I went, they had flyers, they had, and you may not agree with everything, but it's a good way to probably learn some stuff, or see what they're all about.
Good point, Jesse. Can't we take Bavacqua at his word for the stuff that he puts in the paper?
Right. But it's there's just more to it. He can't possibly fit. You have to talk to different people. I would think. He's not the leader of any. He's never proclaimed the leader of the independence movement. And I think I have told him before that I think it gets a little annoying for people when he references, the Chamorros want independence, the people of Guam want independence, and obviously a lot of people don't want to be included in that, and that's something that I've mentioned to them, that maybe that's not the way to go, or but in their mind, there's the people that talk to them and the people they're around want that, so I guess it gets kind of muddy there, but this issue is just so important, and I just find it funny that we have so many migrants now living on Guam, and they come from an independent country. They didn't like what was happening in their country, so they came to Guam. You know what I mean? And I think if the citizens didn't like the situation on Guam, they can do what those people did. If we had a free association or a treaty or whatever, an agreement with the U.S. The way they do. So,
Jesse, free association is impossible. That's a will of the wisp.
Well, I mean, it's not impossible because the FAS did it, but again, it's just something to talk about. Maybe it won't happen in our time, but
it could never happen, because what it means is one independent country making an agreement with another independent country. So there's no difference between free association and independence, because the United States can't negotiate with itself.
No, but weren't they the United States was the administering authority at the time, and then they had then the people voted and said, okay, we want this, or we want to do away with this administration being under the authority of the United States government.
Are you talking about the FSM?
Yeah, or the FAS and the RMI.
Yeah, but they weren't colonies of the United States at the time.
Right, but didn't the UN grant them that the right to self-determination as indigenous people of the land, or that?
There was a trusteeship. The trustee of the Pacific Islands in the United States was a trustee, and it had certain responsibilities. And although there was no sovereignty in those islands, there wasn't a connection to another sovereign like there is here. So the United States can't negotiate with the territory of Guam under Article 4, Section 3. So if Guam were to enter into some kind of an agreement with the United States, it'd have to become independent. So there really only are two options, independence and statehood.
Right, okay, there you go, yeah. Right.
And when you come right down to it, we've only got 160,000 people, and I've explained many times why that can never work as far as statehood is concerned. So the nationalists have backed us into a kind of a one-way street. So the only way out is independence.
Yeah, and that I guess that's the only option we have. I mean, and the thing is, Puerto Rico tried statehood, and apparently what happened was not enough people voted. They voted for statehood, but the participation rate on that plebiscite was very it wasn't significant. It was like 20% or something out of the registered voters. So I think we might have the same problem on Guam with independence. So I don't know, but it's definitely something that I think the youth from Guam is really looking at. I feel that way, and I talked to my grandparents about independence and stuff, and they have no clue about whatever. They're just patriotic to the bone, and America, which they just love America and what the country has given, all the opportunities it's provided to the people and everything. But when you ask them about independence, they have no. I mean, they can't even fathom all the information. They don't even know what colonization is and decolonization is and all that stuff. So it's just interesting to get the conversation going. Yeah.
So for old folks like that who are very happy with the current situation, they've got to be shocked out of their happiness, so they would realize how unhappy they should be. Right, Jesse?
I just say like there's a lot of, but don't get me wrong, there's a lot of elderly folks too in their 60s and 70s that also want independence. So I can't, I mean, I think it's just a lot was going on in those days, and I think it's just a different time now. And I think people, the people on Guam now are more educated than ever. We have people running businesses. We have people are doctors, engineers, all these things, and we didn't have those things back then. So I think the path towards the independence could be something to look at in the future. I don't know about now, but definitely there are more people that are more educated and more, how do you say this, in higher positions that even made it into positions in the federal government, So, and the U.S. has given us that opportunity to do that. And I think it's time we build on those opportunities and really become independent,
See, my shtick is this: that the United States has been very good for Guam. When you look at any other Pacific island, Guam has been, right. U.S. has been very good for Guam, and I would like to continue that relationship, and I would like to strengthen it, rather than going off on what I think is going to be a one-way ticket to Palookaville, because it's just not going to work.
Guam has also been good to the U.S. and I mean, they control 1/3 of the land, and our people have served in the military. We have the highest rates and per capita, and so I mean, I don't know. I mean, if they don't want us as a state, then I think the only option is to go independent and just work with them as a close ally, I guess.
Jesse, it's not a matter of want. It's a matter of the structure. There isn't a way for 160,000 people to become a state.
Well, then that's what I'm saying. Is if it's impossible, then we should just say, okay, we'll be an independent nation. You'll be our ally.
And I'm saying, okay, if we can't become a state, we should make the best of the situation that we have right now.
Yeah, but it's obviously not a good one, though. That's what I'm trying. That's my thing. For me, it's not a good one. Because I just feel we're not getting, if you just look at the numbers, I mean, if this situation is so good, why is almost half of our island living in welfare? Why?
Well, what would it be like? What would it be like in an independent Guahan? If there weren't the federal funds coming in to pay for the things like the Quest card and the Medicaid and
funds, though, because we have the base here, and they say, okay, you gave it as foreign aid. They give foreign aid to other countries. So I don't know. I just want to say that it's just something to look at, and if people want to check it out there, and people there aren't mean. If you go there, they don't yell at you. They don't. When I went there, they're pretty chill and they're pretty cool. So
I'll tell you what I'll do, Jesse. The next time there's a meeting, you call up and I'll give you a little airtime to announce the meeting if you want to.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thank you, sir. Yep.
Okay.
But have a good day and a good weekend.
Thanks for calling, Jesse.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So I've maintained that all along that the United States is an imperialist country, and it became an imperialist country at least in 1898. If not in 1861. And it's good that the United States was. Come back down after the seventh inning stretch here and pick up on this and get to Independence Lou.
Here at APL, our core values give the company its heart and soul. Whether it's connecting your business with our global network through our newly enhanced service or investing our efforts into giving back to the community, APL is committed to serving you. We humbly honor the opportunity to find innovative solutions for you and your business. To learn more about our enhanced service, call 588-4651 or visit www.apl.com/Guam for more details.
Have you ever made a big mistake in your job or career, or with investing, for example? I mean, a really big mistake. How much was that mistake worth? I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, we'll pursue big mistakes and their price tags.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Well, here we are, seventh inning stretch. We got two more innings of Tall Tales to go. I'm going to spend the rest of the time here talking about Independence Lou, but before I do, I've got to finish what I was saying about what I think the destiny for our island should be, and that is this, that the United States is an imperial power. It has been since at least 1898. And good that it was, because had the United States not decided it wanted to build its empire around the Philippines, I would be speaking Japanese right now. Hi, watashi wa Nihongo wakarimasen. Because the Japanese had begun their expansion right around the turn of the last century, and when they beat the Russians in the Straits of Tsushima in 1904. They figured we can play this game with the Westerners just as good as they can. They had their colonies in Korea, Taiwan, etc. And had the United States not stepped in and taken the Philippines, that would have probably been next. Guam, all these islands out here, the former Spanish islands, would have come under the Japanese influence. The thing that our nationalists don't want to talk about is that geopolitics is geopolitics. I keep hearing this, well, you know, the reason that Lou says that national defense is important is because we're a target. If it weren't for all the military here on the island, we wouldn't be a target. Not so. The geopolitical world doesn't care much about the culture of the people or any of the niceties. The geopolitical realities of the world are a hard-knuckle, immoral pursuit of national interests. And if for some reason the United States pulled out of here, you could bet that China would be here like white on rice. And the second thing is that much of geopolitical interest is based on strategy, where you've deployed your forces, what kind of weapons you've deployed in what particular place, etc. It's kind of like a global chess game as to how you place your forces. So by having American forces concentrated here in Guam, it's a message to other countries, don't come over here, don't try it. Okay, let me see who I got on the phone here. R. Tom. Okay, let me pick up R. Tom. I will then talk a little bit about Josh Tenorio's speech to that committee, and then I'll go into Independence Lou. Hello, Tom.
Hello?
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good, Tom.
It's sad to hear that we have a governor that thinks that way, that if it weren't for the U.S. military being here, we would not be a target.
That's some of the nationalists that are saying that, the Victoria Lola, Leon Guerreros, etc.
But see, our governor is pro-independence, isn't she?
Yes, she is.
Okay, yeah. So she's in that time frame anyway, that group. But all this is really a separatist movement where Bavaka and his followers they just want to separate Guam from the United States. And we only, like you said, we only have one option right now. That is what they're saying is independence and free association, and free association really means independence anyway. So since we cannot be a state, what can we have on our ballot on the true plebiscite that we will have in the future? We will never allow the voter-only vote to happen here. We will resist that to the max, and we will never allow that to happen here. If we are going to have a vote here, it will have to be a vote of every registered voters in this island, no matter what race you are, or no matter what religion you are. If you're a registered voter, that's the kind of plebiscite. That is the true definition of a plebiscite. So, whenever we have the true plebiscite here, what do you think the ballot would look like? There should be just two choices.
Well, I just mentioned what I think it should look like. It should be like this, Tom. Question: Should Guam become an independent sovereign nation, completely separate from the United States? Yes or no?
Yeah, basically that's what I was just thinking about. But wouldn't it be nicer to see the word status quo? The two choices is the status quo or independence.
Well, the problem is that the word status quo just doesn't have much pizzazz. You know, nobody's going to go out and buy a new car called the status quo. So my theory has been this, that we are part of the American empire. I think a large majority of our people adhere to the ideals and customs of that empire. So we should try to secure our place in the empire, stop acting like victims, and start showing the United States how good we've been for Guam, for the U.S., and how good we can be for the U.S., and try to make the best that we can of being part of that empire. Now, the question that I don't think the nationalists want to answer is this. Suppose that a plebiscite were held and every single person on the island said, I want things to stay the way they are. I think they'd say, no, you can't do that because that's not decolonization. You can't do that even if that's what everybody wants. And that's what I hear coming from the nationalist camp.
Yeah, but there is no law that says Guam has to be decolonized.
Well, they're making some references to some things that the United States did right after World War II at the beginning of the Cold War. And they see this as their ticket to going off island to these various these various committee meetings where some of the most tyrannical nations in the world are members, and making speeches like the one that I just read here from Melvin Bora.
That's why I wish they would just look at the dictionary and define the word so they'll understand what the true meaning of a colony is. I feel that Guam never had been a colony. It is not now a colony or never will be a colony. Because they got to look at what happened in the 13 states, 13 original states. That is a colony, the original 13 settlements back in history. Those are true colonies. Those are people from Europe that came to the new land and occupied the new land.
And they were called, and now the Bavakwites are equating people that came from the United States mainland and calling them settlers, which is it's the S word. It's not a nice word at all.
Yeah, anyway, I wish people would not go to that stupid rally that they're going to have down there, that independence rally. People are just going to get brainwashed by Bavaka and his followers. They're just going to tell people how bad the United States is. I went to their first meeting years ago, and all I keep hearing from one speaker to another is that the reason why we have all of this crime happening here is because we are under the United States. And I stood up and I questioned him, like, are you saying that if we make Guam independent, we will have no crimes like this? They just kept quiet. They don't have an answer.
If Guam were independent, there'd be no crime. The land would be filled with milk and honey. Everyone would have a living wage. If you drop something, if you let go of something, it wouldn't fall to the floor because the law of gravity would be repealed. It would be such a utopia. If that were the case, then people could get away from the United States, which is such a bad country that people are trying to escape from it all the time. That's why there's that fence between Tijuana and San Diego to keep the people from the United States from escaping to Mexico, right, Tom?
Yeah. That's what they're trying to brainwash people to think, that the United States is so bad that we will not have all these crimes if we were independent.
Yeah.
That's a very asinine thinking of their. They don't understand that if Guam ever becomes independent, which I know it will never will, but let's assume for a moment that if it does become independent, they will not have all of these Japanese tourists coming here. Because why do you think they have people coming here? Why do you think we have wedding chapels here in Guam? Because people want to come to the United States and be married in a United States soil, so they can maybe have their children be born in Guam, where they will be a natural-born American citizen for their children. But if Guam becomes an independent foreign nation and is not part of the United States, those people won't be coming here. They're going to go to Hawaii, or they're going to go to American Samoa.
I hear what you're saying, Tom.
So, and this island will never survive with the small amount of tourists that we're having, without the national grants that we're getting now. This island will never survive just by tourism alone. Okay, Bob, thanks for letting me vent.
Well, thanks for calling, Tom. Good talking to you. So going back into this this speech that that Josh Tenorio gave to the same committee, he says, as a special committee and the General Assembly have noted, this process came to an end when the administrating power failed to act on our proposal for a constructive path towards a sovereign status for Guam. Clearly, nothing we have proposed, all of which is consistent with the standards of international law, has been acceptable to the administrating power. The only course proposed by the administrating power to date is a status quo, which is not the desire of Guam. And then he goes on and kvetches about the land, and he goes on to say, it is clear that without true decolonization, our views and recommendations regarding land use will remain subordinate and without proper legal authority to influence in the decision-making process. So without belaboring the point, both of these speeches are laying out the desire for the commission, what is it, the Commission for the Socialist Chamorro Republic of Guam, to be independent. Now I turn to Lou Leon Guerrero, who met with the activists who apparently, at one time was intent on protecting the tree of knowledge till that whole charade was exposed, for, with an abundance of fact that everything that the eco-fascists was saying was wrong and misleading. So Lou finally came out after calling defense contractors carpetbaggers and saying that the economic benefits of the buildup are blown out of proportion. This is a key for Lou. If you're talking to Lou, make sure that you don't exaggerate or you will be seen to be blowing things out of proportion. She came away from all that, and then at that same meeting, as quoted on the Pacific News Center, and you may have seen this on TV, this is one more thing. She said, I would really like to accommodate you eco-fascists and you nationalists and your other people, but as the governor of an unincorporated territory, there's not much I can do. And the reality is, of course, that if we were in a state, it wouldn't be any different. The governor of a state is not going to be ordering the Defense Department around, but she uses that for cover. I'm just the governor of an unincorporated territory, so I'd like to do what you want, but I can't. And I use the analogy, it's kind of like, Mom, can I have a new bike for Christmas? Oh, yeah, Bobby, you really should have a new bike for Christmas. Your old bicycle is beat up. And I know all your friends have gotten new bicycles. I really want you to have it, but I talked to your dad, and your dad said, I'm not going to spend money on a new bicycle for Bobby. So you can't have one, but I really want you to have it. So Lou is finding cover by emphasizing her powerlessness to do what the eco-fascists and the nationalists want her to do. But then she really tipped her hand, and they didn't notice. This is what Lou said. After several testimonies, this is from the PNC, after several testimonies ignited heated conversations in the room, the governor outlined her plans for Guam's political status. We get our political status in order, and we vote on what we want so we can have more control over our destiny here, and so we can have more control over our lands. And here it is. So we can go to the United Nations and negotiate with the United States. And so we can be at the table when these kinds of things are being negotiated. Okay, there it is. And I'm surprised that the nationalists didn't jump on this, because Lou is saying, I want independence for Guam. Now, I sometimes wonder if I'm misreading what she said. I sometimes wonder, does she know what she's saying? Is she in so far over her head that she doesn't realize that some of the stuff she makes is going to come back and bite her? Or is she being really sincere about this? Well, I'll come back and wrap this up in the home stretch.
In illness and in wellness, Calvo's Select Care is health care that is there for you. That's why over 80% of the Guam medical community places their trust and insures with us. We offer our members wellness and fitness programs for a healthier lifestyle and provide a comprehensive medical network on and off island to help members from unexpected illnesses. Contact Calvo's Select Care today for more information.
Hey, welcome to this Subway ad for the new club collection. How do you want it?
I'll take a book club.
Absolutely.
So, last week we sunk our teeth into Subway's meaty new release, the Steak Club.
I didn't finish it yet.
Oh, not again, Sandra. This week it's the new Southwest Chicken Club, also by Subway. No spoilers, but there's a tasty twist.
Jalapeno cheddar bread and guacamole?
Sandra, get out. Subway, make it what you want.
Good ending.
Limited time only at participating restaurants.
The home stretch, Tall Tales. It means I got about 8 minutes here to finish up. Who remembers, who could tell me who said this? I'll be a better governor than you, Ray. I was born here. I've lived here all my life. I'll be a better governor than you. You know who that was, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir, I do.
Who was that?
Governor Lulian Guerrero.
At the time that she was not governor, the time she wanted to be Governor Lulian Guerrero, right?
On the campaign trail.
On the campaign trail, yeah. So now she says, we've got to get our political status in order to have more control over our destiny, so that we can have more control over our lands, so we can go to the United Nations and negotiate with the United States, and so we can be at the table when these kinds of things are being negotiated. Well, first of all, that isn't how the United Nations works, but it doesn't matter. I would give her credit from speaking from the heart here, and not from the standpoint of being an international political scientist. But she wants to be sitting down at the United States with the United States at the United Nations negotiating these things. Well, states don't go to the United Nations. No state has a delegate at the United Nations. And states don't negotiate with the United States. We have a Congress that kind of works on the relationship between the national government and the state governments. But that's not what Lou's saying. She's saying, so we can go to the United Nations and negotiate with the United States. And so we can be at a table when these kinds of things are being negotiated. Very interesting. So first of all, she calls the defense contractors carpetbaggers. Second thing she says is the military buildup financially is not going to be that great. Then she says, the reason that I'm going to go with the buildup is for defense purposes in order to defend the island. And then she says, we've got to get our political status in order. So what she's saying is, we've got to become independent so we can go to the United Nations and negotiate with the United States. And, of course, the speech that her lieutenant governor gave here at the C-24 regular session of the United Nations, and Melvin Borja, you know, the fiction that commission is anything other than a pro-independence organ of the government of Guam is so thin that it's very easy to see through. So you've got that commission, which she references throughout this controversy here over the tree of knowledge and the military buildup. It's why she keeps saying, I support the Commission on Decolonization. And of course she does, because Melvin Borja is the champion of independence, as is her lieutenant governor now, according to the words that he spoke at that committee meeting. So Lou may be for the buildup right now, or at least she may be saying that right now. But what she really wants is to go to the United Nations and negotiate with the United States so we can be at the table when these kinds of things are being negotiated. Independent. So if she had come out and said that during the campaign, and she had said that in so many words, would that have made a difference? Wouldn't have made a difference for me. But it might have made a difference. It might have made a difference from some of the other folks. But here it is. We have a governor right now that supports independence from the United Nations, from the United States, and obviously membership in the United Nations. So that was my item on the card, Independence Lou versus the United States. So I got just a couple more minutes to go here. Let me see if anybody's saying, if there are any kind words in Facebook here for your ever popular host. I've got Nate horning in and saying, ready for the weekend. Well, the real Joe Cruz and I aren't. We don't like the weekend, Nate. And then I've got June Sincero saying, hi, DJ. I don't know who DJ is. Rico Blancaflor. Hello, Judge Bob and Tall Tales Posse. Carl Bora Nelson. Howdy, Bob. Real Joe Cruz and the International Tall Tales Truth Posse. Looking forward to the next thing on the card at the end of the show yesterday. Does Lou want to be the commissar of the Socialist Republic of Guam? I think she does. Carl Bora Nelson. I got taken in by Lou's words. I forgot that the world of politics is best to be highly skeptical of words. Always watch actions of politicians. And Rico says, yes, July is Gun Pride Month. James Adkins, I'm super proud of my guns. Pierre, afternoon, Judge. Good afternoon, Pierre. Nate horns in and says, like Ray says, they're raising the wage to get reelected. They should cut back on the BPT, but businesses won't reduce the cost of goods now that they know people will pay the current prices. Joe Cruz says, Bob, Sam Elliott called and he said he wants his mustache back. I'm going to refer him to the real Joe Cruz because the real Joe Cruz is growing a little bit of hair on his face. Maybe because he can't grow any on his head. I don't know, but that's what he's doing. Okay, it's been another bang-up week of Tall Tales. It's been really great having the opportunity to entertain all of my international radio listening audience. We got to be gone for a couple days, but the real Joe and I will be back 1600 on Monday, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. See you then.